Today we are going to talk about the nature of our realm, how it works, how it ties in with Santos Bonnacci's knowledge and teachings, and how Walter Russells' work explains it brilliantly. I first met Santos on a panel with the Sun and Moon group, where I give him a private presentation of the beginnings of my research into how our world truly works, after discovering the Earth is level and stationary a few years ago. The research I presented was some of my Nazca line decodings and the avenue my research was taking me after realizing what the Nazca lines truly represent and portray, the technical blueprints to the realm. I knew I would find the correct world map when I overlaid the lines, glyphs and the Nazca mandala. When I presented this to Santos, there was a good silence for about 20 seconds. I knew his mind was already processing all of what I had shown him, and Santos, being the very sharp person he is, was stunned by this presentation. Of course he recovered and immediately started expanding upon some of the things he had seen in the presentation. His knowledge and explanations are second to none. It was what Santos explained to me that gave me the direction I needed to be looking into. Of course I met one conscience and we teamed up, and here we are today, a few years later, still decoding the realm from within a small team of excellent researchers and friends. I have kept in touch with Santos since those days, sharing links to videos on Skype and little updates on progression. He only had to give me a few tips and I was there decoding what I found into the APM model, our model of how this realm truly works. Santos told me to look into Walter Russells' work one day, and wow, did that speed up our research once I started decoding what Walter Russells' work was teaching me. Now I'm no genius, so don't be getting that impression, but I can see and decode what all this is telling me very easily. So today I'm going to show you how all this connects together and explains a lot of what Santos is teaching you, what Walter Russells' work is teaching you, and how this realm truly works. Now what you are going to see and hear may not be to your liking. It may shock you, surprise you, even make your brain melt. But that's okay, it is what it is and I make no excuses for it. I'm here to present to you our findings, as is the rest of this team. I'm a flat earther and I came here to see how our realm truly works. And what we have found is that everything is being misrepresented to hide this realm and how it truly works. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Thus, we have to decode everything we look into to get to the truths. First, I want you to listen to this video from Santos Bonnacci and Lily Rose Day, as I'm going to decode and demonstrate some of it and how it fits into the APM model.
Right, so I like my red shift, blue shift markers.
Nice.
And black. So the best way to do it, we just do a simple graphic. Okay, so here we go. So there's a point in counter space, right? That point there, that's energy, consciousness, life, soul, everything projects from the monad.
Okay.
And these monads are little stars. We call them atoms. This is an atom. It's a point in counter space. It's not spatial.
Okay.
So it's everywhere, but locatable with your physical senses in a topos or a locus in spatial in space, but it's in counter space. It's like this computer here, say for instance. Okay, this computer has a hard drive which is full of information, and yet it doesn't weigh any more when it's full of data than when it's not. It's the same way. So that information is really not spatial. It's in counter space.
Okay.
But it's very powerful information.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's full of great information. You know, remember Zoolander? When he smashed the computer, he was trying to get the information out of the computer looking for it. Okay. So that's what these stars are. That's what atoms are.
Okay.
Conventional science will tell you that atoms are empty. So they're just points of energy. They're light beings. Yeah? But these light beams, the monad cannot do anything in a physical material construct without projecting the energy out of it.
Oh, okay.
Right? And it's always projected as a point line. So you never get just lines in space like that. The energy will not project out of this point in counter space only in one direction. It will always do redshift first in a spiral, in a helix. That's not a spiral. Well, that's a spiral, two-dimensionally,
Right.
but we call these, it's like DNA. It's DNA.
Right.
And you know what? Dang, I should have put blue on top. I need to be more accurate.
Because blue shift goes first. It's always blue first, right?
Well, I always use man is the measure of the universe.
Right.
So look at your woman, and have a look at your subtle body. You've got red chakra at the bottom of your torso, Taurus, and you've got blue chakra at the top of your torso, Taurus. See, so, and the center is the solar plexus. It's actually in the heart because it's the middle chakra, okay? But the center of blue shift, red shift, is here. Yeah, that yellow chakra is really like more akin to white. So this point here is white light because only white light is magnetic. No other light is magnetic. Red shift, blue shift is electromagnetic. Dielectricity is black light. So that white light, it's known to scientists, does not vibrate. It's radiating.
Okay.
It's a pulse, and it's magnetic. And that pulse always perturbates out radially, radiation, on a longitudinal wave. So that pulse goes like this. There's a plane of inertia here, and it ripples out. And that ripple generates a wave, and this is the wave. So as the energy goes, always energy goes like this, in two directions, always. So the monad becomes the dyad, becomes the triad, and then jumps to the tetrad, which is, yeah. So you'll notice I did redshift a lot bigger because this is radiation. This vibration is called radiation, and this is gravitation because this is left turning and going converging and centripetal. So before I should have, when I did red first, I should have done it below because the torso, man is the measure of the universe, teaches you that redshift is below, hell is down, blue sky, heaven is up. Okay? So when white light decides to create a toroidal field and give form in the material world, projects outward of itself, immediately it becomes a dyad. But the first light that comes from white light is red shift, red.
Okay.
And then immediately, instantly, blue follows. And then these make a green. So, did I get a green? Let's have a look. Yep. So there's your heart chakra with 12 petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Because why did I go back to the heart chakra? Well, because we need to include what's beyond blue shift, which is indigo and violet. So let's make this all pretty, shall we? Great whiteboard I've got here. So this is makeshift because, you know.
It's the whiteboard of requirement.
Yeah. All right, so let's go slow. So this is pulsating. And this is the plane of inertia of a toroidal field. Now you see here, this takes the shape of an hourglass. I'm going to make it wider at the bottom because blue light is a higher frequency. Sorry, that's not a very good wave. And red light, this will be better, is a longer wave.
Okay.
All right? So, and this part of the torus field will always be 0.618 times bigger than this. So this will be 1, and this will be 1.618, the ratio.
Oh, okay.
It's the phi ratio.
Right.
Phi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or phi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. And then what happens now is you have a toroidal field. No particles. And that's an atom.
Okay.
So, neutron, the block wall, the plane of inertia. Because as the red light comes out centrifugally diverging, and then it comes back around to this point here, then it turns blue. The proton becomes an electron.
Mm-hmm.
You see, so when scientists are looking at the electron, and they say, oh, so many electrons, they are only looking at half of the toroidal field.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you that a carbon atom supposedly has 6 neutrons, right? 6 protons and 6 electrons.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because the field is expressing itself in the number of 6,
Uh-huh.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, because of how much power it has and what the frequency is. Because all the elements, thank you, Walter Russell, are frequencies. High frequency, low frequency. All right?
Right.
Good. Let me not jump ahead of myself because it's important to do this step by step. So, Walter Russell also taught that. He was teaching this model primarily, the blue vortex and the red vortex, right? But what you can see here is clearly you can see an hourglass. This is an hourglass because this is time. It's pulsating from here. Every atom does this, right? So you can see this is chronos. This is temporal. Tempo, time, chronos, Saturn, Satan, the world of Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Satan rules the earth. Satan rules the air. Okay? And this is Satan in here, old man time. And this is his partner, his wife, space.
Mm-hmm.
Chronos and Rhea, area.
Oh, yeah.
Freya, Maria, it's space. She is spatial, she is magnetic and expands. Magnetism, the female white light. You see the black and white yin and yang?
Mm-hmm.
That's masculine. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
This is feminine. This is yes. White light is feminine. It moves. Mag means to move. Magnetism, magnitude. See, white light generates this red shift, blue shift. So it
Right.
knows how to make space.
Mm-hmm.
Dielectricity, black light, that's resting light. It doesn't move. Rest, motion. Inertia, force.
Force is feminine.
Yes. It's not masculine.
Huh.
It's not. Masculine energy is resting. It's the black light. That's in the ultimate, in its highest archetypal
It's like the Einstein.
principal position. Yes.
The
Ein Sof.
Okay.
This is
the
the
higher.
Ein Sof.
Okay.
Yeah, but they are a partnership. This is Krishna, black. This is Radharani, golden white light.
Huh. Okay.
It's always, Krishna is dielectricity. Krishna means to rest, and black. And that's why you see Christ black and Madonna black, because it's talking about black resting light.
Okay, because that's what I was just about to ask. Do we see the feminine personified as that black light? Because I was thinking about the black Madonna and the dark goddess, and so I was thinking about that. So that's what's confusing me. But of course, the white light gives birth to the twins. The female gives birth to the twins.
Good.
Okay. Yeah.
So you'll see the black feminine, you'll see it, but ultimately the highest archetype is white. The pure virgin of white light, Mary, means magnetism. Okay? And Joseph's another word for Saturn. Maria is Rhea.
Okay.
So whether you take the Christian or the Greeks have Saturn and Rhea. Time and space. That's what it is. And then in the Christian scripture, or Christian Greek scriptures, you've got Joseph and Mary are the mothers of the Lord. Well, Seth is Set, is Sat, is Saturn, is Satan. Time and space create a child, the Saviour, Jesus, which is this, the form, the Word made flesh. This is it.
Right.
This is how the Word is made flesh. Okay, so
Still though, so do you think that there are some systems where they personify the whole thing as feminine, like the goddess cultures and religions? Because I'm thinking like about Hecate, and that's all that blackness, like Troma, Troma Nagmo, she's real black, Sati and Kali. So
the black goddess. It's just flipping this over, because through creation, everything expands and dilutes. The source is always pure and unchanging. And that's it. Masculine, feminine. Krishna means rest, so does Christ. Christ, crest, rest.
And that's why the feminine would be evil too, like taking the apple and doing the thing, because she's trying to make the world, trying to make the illusion by birthing the twins. Whereas if you get it into the phi ratio, you get it like balanced on the chariot, then you're doing the longitudinal and you're resting in that magnet.
Yes.
Okay, I get it. Different than I learned. Thank you.
Yeah. So really, this is dielectricity and this is magnetism.
Okay.
Because magnetism is force and motion. Inertia and acceleration is dielectricity. And when these two create abrasion against each other and they start agitating to make a wave, redshift, blueshift is born. Radiation, gravitation, fission, fusion,
Okay.
proton, electron, divergence, convergence, force and motion, inertia and acceleration. This is accelerating back into the black hole. This is going back into black light to rest, and then it's being forced out as white light. But white light cannot do anything or go anywhere in the physical world. It has to start vibrating. And that is that polarization of light, redshift, blueshift. That's this. So that's this hourglass. That see, this is the hyperbola So the Greek word hyperbola Baal, this is Bel, the god Bel, Baal, Baal, because this is where everything begins. The sun, the moon, the stars, atoms in your body, you, everyone has this Baal in them. The Greek word hyperbola means the hourglass. It means hyperbolistic, projecting, thrusting out. That's why when you exaggerate, you're speaking in hyperbole. Hyperbole. I told you 1,000 times, Louis, don't write on this book. And I only told you, what, twice. And you think, well, that's a hyper. Stop hyperbolizing with me, or stop speaking bull. Because bull, like a papal bull or anything, it's the word of God. So that word is actually sonoluminescence. It's sound and light. See, sound is going to be rippling in waves from that outward. That's magnetism. It radiates. It doesn't vibrate. It just goes. If you throw a pebble in a pond, you'll see this circle, then it gets bigger. That's magnetism. Its radial wave does never diminish. It always travels outwardly forever. And as it does that, propagating through the medium, air, ether, fire, whatever, it's going to encounter resistance. And that resistance will go like this. Red shift, blue shift.
Right.
But that wave there, it's temporal. It's not real, it's empty. It makes form, but it diminishes, it decays. It's a wave that decays. So this radial wave, radiation, propagating along this plane of inertia, the block wall, in every torus field, is now generating this red shift, blue shift. So you see, this is the quadrad. So monad, dyad, tetrad, including the neutron and the block wall. Now that's the trinity because you've got neutron, proton, and electron, but space projects out in 4 directions, or 6, but 4 as the tetrad, or the tetragrammaton, or the tetrahedron. Fire, the polyhedra of fire. It's got tetra in it. It's about 4, and that's and that fire is this, right? Because how do we know? For proton. So what I said was this is the neutron, dielectricity, black light, really, black hole. That's a black hole and a white hole. It's a black sun and a white sun. All atoms are like this. They're black and white. Black is the light going out back into counter space. White is the light coming out to make your torso torus. And red shift, blue shift is the form that you have. So this veil becomes phal, and it's the phallus. That's the phallus, the obelisk. And this is the torus, is the uterus. Uterus. And that's feminine, space, male phallic, time. So here you have, why do they have maypoles? Why do they have the Holy Cross in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit? Why? Because your body is the cross. Yeah? That's the tomb. There you go. That's the letter T for your anatomy, because the light is entombed in the body. You come from a womb, and then you end up in a tomb. Right? And this is the tomb. It's anatom. Atom. All is atom. All is atom. This is the tomb. Tomb, you can say atom or Adam. Same thing. So Tom, without the A, Tom means twin. You see, because all atoms are twins. The dyad, duality, the demiurge. See, this is the source God creator. This is the demiurge who, who's red Satan and blue Krishna, good and evil, cold and hot, feminine, masculine, or vice versa. They've got boys. No, it's true. Girls are pink and boys are blue. There you go, got it right. Roses are red.
This is I've had a problem and you just synchronized it. It's like my brain's went. Yeah.
This does everything for your brain. This brings you into direct knowledge.
But why is the blue pillar the moon? And I would associate the moon with the goddess. So when you look at Jacqueline and Boaz, the moon is above the blue pillar.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, that's what threw me off with that. I mean, I think it's just conflations of I think you can look at it both ways. And that when you cross the hemispheres with the red and blue, there's a lot of confusion in the occult world on this.
I know. See, blue shift is also here. It's also here. So there's not just blue here and red here. There's also red coming out at the same time. Yes.
Right.
But if that were so, you wouldn't be having legs at the ground all the time. You'd be, upside down as well. You'd be like you have to have that direction. So a magnet, rather than having poles, right? They've got red shift, blue shift. It's obvious what's going on with magnets. If you look at the work of Ken Wheeler, he puts magnets under a ferrocell. Okay, a ferrocell. So it's a magnetic viewing film, basically, with liquid, metallic liquid in it. So it brings out the light. So it's got LED lights all around the ferrocell, and he just puts it on all these magnets. And what you do is you see these torch fields.
I saw life springing out from it with the pig nose. It was amazing. It was like all of a sudden you actually saw it become to animate life, animating the holograph.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing work.
Yes. And so, I found sick. So, okay, where were we going with that? So I was going to say something about what were you just talking about?
I'm still thinking about masculine being blue.
Yes,
So I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that. Yeah.
Yeah. So from source, that's the principal archetype, but they do flip over. So and the same with red shift, blue shift. You see, this is red is right turning energy. It's right turning proton. Oh, that's what I was going to do. Okay, proton. Yeah, this is a proton. Let's call this a proton. I'm going to put the R right over here because we're going to insert a letter in here to understand what exactly is a proton. Proton, red, electron, blue. Let's do it like this, eh? L is liquid. R is radiation or fire. Because once you put a Y in here, you begin to understand what a proton is. It's fire and water, the two agents of creation. It's a pyroton, shortened to proton. Redshift, right turning energy, and this is left turning because it has an L in it. L and R. Right? And this is left turning. And Pierluigi Ina teaches this. He's an Italian genius who was a colleague of Marconi. He was also teaching that the Earth is stationary, and he proved that the Earth is stationary. And he was teaching that there's two energies, there's solar and Earth. And the sun is moving through the ether, perturbating the field above our heads on the stationary Earth, and the energy is right turning. He studied the sun for 30 years. Then he says, that the Earth receives that right turning light and then sends it back left turning, blue shift going back up to heaven. The sun is bringing red, and he says that the theatre, the Earth, in between these two fields is where all creation manifests. Between the sun, Uranus, in other words, it can be Uranus, and Gaia, the Earth, and they are husband and wife. Now, Uranus is the firmament, the eighth sphere, above terra firma. So Gaia is terra firma, and Uranus is firmament. You see, both of those terra firma, firmament, are what keep the 7 planets underneath spinning and creating all the destiny of all humans in the world. And this is how it works. It's so simple. There's 3 things you need to remember. The neutron, proton, and electron, in that order. Okay? Like this. Dielectricity. That's the neutron. Magnetism, its partner, because these are, whoops, I did it again. Mag, to move. It's feminine, white, pure goddess. Rest and motion. And when they move, they create their only begotten Son, the Word that was made flesh. L. See, the real name of Jesus, was that the camera? No. So the real name of Jesus is Emmanuel.
Oh, right.
And his girlie, she is Magdalene. Magnetism and electricity. Okay?
It's a good story.
Yeah. Because all the
I
stories...
read it. Okay, so we had a little camera mishap and we lost the end of our conversation. So we're going to try to recreate that and put some of the things that are on the board, kind of explain those a little bit more.
Yeah, okay. So since I don't remember what exactly I covered, I know I haven't covered this, and I guess this and this. So the bowl, being the most important central figure here, is actually the arbol, or arbor. So you see, here you see how this is the same word for tree in Spanish and Latin, but it's always this tree here, R and L being interchangeable. Remember, right turning, red shift, left turning, blue shift. And then we put this up. Okay.
Right, because I think I was having cognitive dissonance still, trying to understand how the blue and the moon, you know, like the blue column of Joachim and Boaz, and how the blue went with the moon. And so I was still like trying to connect blue to water and feeling that was feminine, and you were going to go and you put this up here to kind of try to talk about it a little bit more from another angle. Do you remember that?
Right.
Okay.
That's why up here, the interchangeableness of these two co-principles, co-eternal principles, is more natural. Here, and more distinct. It's usually at the highest level before its emanations and expansions. It's always feminine magnetism and masculine dielectricity, and always the Christ or Krishna is black, and his girl she's white and virginal and pure magnetism, Magdalene. So you've got Jesus' real name is Emmanuel, and his lady is Mary Magdalene. I think we covered that, but
right.
It's always going back to this Trinity. So why you'd have cognitive dissonance when you see why is blue loving and red harsh, or vice versa, Krishna's blue, Satan is red. Well, this yin yang here, this is the material one. This one here, this is the supernal one. Infernal, supernal. So this is the world of the demiurge, the dyad. This is the monad world.
Okay.
Here. But this happens here, after it expands, you see. And so this is the South Korean flag. They have this red, and they have the 4 I Ching which represent the 4 elements. So if you look at it as this is masculine and this is feminine, because fire is, in astrology, is masculine and water, being blue, is feminine, well then when you go to the other 2 elements, earth and air, well then you see how they flip, because now air is masculine, it's blue sky, and the earth is red, Adama in Hebrew, meaning red earth. So we have now, they're flipped over. You see, so in this world of 4 elements, there's not 4 elements here.
Now, so this is different than what we talked about before, but now I just caught something. So the fire and water are the spiritual elements. That's why we take initiation by fire and by water, right? And those 2 are reflecting it one way. And the more earthly elements, air, when we take our first breath, and earth, are seeing it the other way. So I think it's just the mirror image, you know, and so I think that I was trying to ask you, why do they put the moon above the blue pillar? And I think we talked about how like different mystical traditions have gone different ways with this. When you cross the hemispheres, it gets confusing and people understand it different ways. But there's also the idea that the stars looking down or the planets looking down are embodying it in mirror image from us.
Yes, yes.
You know, like that hermetic symbol.
It has to flip. For instance, hydrogen, what's water made of? Water is feminine. Hydrogen and oxygen. Now, both of those are very flammable.
Okay.
But see, when they combine, they flip polarity and become non-flammable and feminine. You see? So this is what's going on here. Fire and water are the 2 active agents, or the 2 active humours in astrology, because they are hot and cold. But earth and water, earth and air, they are passive, patients. They're not agents of creation. So fire and earth, fire and water, they get everything done. They are the agents and they are active. Whereas the air element and the earth element are passive, so they enable the creation. They let the fire and water pass through them. You see?
I see.
So it flips over.
Yeah.
Everything flips over when it expands.
Would you still put the moon above the blue pillar? Or would you switch it?
I would. Red moon, blue moon, you've got red blood moon, you've got a blue moon.
That's
the sun is always depicted as blue and red as well. Red shift, blue shift. Mars is red, Venus is green, blue. It
goes either way, and I think that's when Molly came in and said about how the moon was receiving the sun's light, and so there's even a confluence and a unity between that, and that was her point, which was a beautiful point. So,
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I think I asked you after this point about I asked you if a sine wave if it would be a full sine wave this way around and a full sine wave this way, or if half would be going this way and half this way.
Both are true. Half going out that way, and then so one would be going this way, and the other one would be going that way. But then it has to contract again. It has to come back. Whatever went out has to come back. So it can never be a half a wave. You see what I mean?
Okay, so it's the whole wave this way, because this is.
If you look at the Stan Tenen Dance of the Hebrew Alphabet on YouTube, Stan Tenen, Hebrew scholar, he shows how around the torus field, which he uses a model of an apple, there are 12 segments. And that's it, and that's what I teach. And he shows how you do it with an apple model of the torus field, and then he shows that the sine wave goes around here. It goes once around the donut. So, Dance of the Hebrew Alphabet. That would be another way of looking at it and understanding it. But the point about this is that either way you look at it, whether you look at it, the bull or the taur, see, I call this the Taurus bulls, because both words mean bulls and cows and cattle and ovine. But if you look at it as a torus field, then it's a tauri. So this could be a tauri as well, with the word Taurus in it. But it's also the bowl or the ball. This is boring through matter. So it's a ball. You see what I mean? There's so many words that come from here. It's just astounding. I've done many presentations on it.
And it's like imagine a donut like that. It's cut down that way. It's like we're looking into like those big O's.
Yes.
It's like
That's
looking
right.
into the donut.
Yep.
And the other part's invisible to us. And that's kind of how it is in the reflection world. I think you can't see the flip side. And right there, if you look into it, you can see the donut center. You know, the perpetrator field is, and then like, boom, donuts are coming. You took a big bite out of half of it.
Yep.
So it goes that way also.
Well, that's right. Well, these are reciprocating and processing.
Yeah.
So not only are they doing this, they're
Yeah.
also going around.
In and through. And
It's called the lamella frequency, or electromagnetic retardation.
And then Dan Winter teaches that if we get these motions in phase conjugated, synchronous, like if we get them synced up in a phase conjugated ratio, that we create a longitudinal wave. So this is why I'm so interested in the backwards motion, because I think that it's an untapped potential.
Right, let's do that. So remember we discussed how all of this is going back to God's source. So we've got the source and the force. When they say let the force be with you, that's magnetism. And that's what those what are they called? Lightsabers, yeah. That's magnetism, that's the force.
Oh, right.
But the ones who are tapped into this energy, they have the force, dielectricity, because it's resting.
Mm-hmm.
It's still. It's not moving.
Right.
It's still. This is power that you can use. That is used. This is the usable. So one is power. One is powerful. One is attractive. One is attraction. One is. I'm trying to think of all the analogies of how this works, but what happens is when you incarnate, you come out into the world and you have through a U-torus and you get a torus torso. So this is how you come out into the world, and then everything goes back. This is where you reach virtually, at your middle age, and then you start going back to source. You know how people. When they get older, they're doing things to get back to heaven.
Right.
To the grandchildren, right? So, but this is power. This is force. This is going to be your source. So when you meditate, you go into your heart, and you still these other waves, and you do this radiation wave, and you connect with everything in the universe, right? You're drawing from that force. And that's what you're talking about, because whatever wave goes out, there's always one coming in, and then going out in the opposite direction as well. But it's that coming in energy, which Schellberger calls the implosion cold energy, that is really most representative of this standing wave. It's this, because it's going back into it. This is coming away from it. That's why this is all to do with red, rage, radiation, radioactivity. This is radioactivity. Rebel. All these very harsh R words. Now the reason being is because these two letters are called the two liquids. You see, and they are interchangeable. This is the lateral liquid. This is the rotic. So basically, this redshift energy is like this, pulsating. This is the only letter in the alphabet which actually restores and goes back to that radiation wave, pulsating. That's why the letter R pulsates. Whereas this one, it's a flat line, yeah. And that's they are the two sounds of electricity. You listen to electricity happen, and you. You'll hear the pulse in it, and you'll hear it flatline. And this is what's going on. These are the two halves of creation: fire, proton, pyroton. The proton is nothing other than the pyroton, and this is liquid. L.
Right. And we were talking about how if you can, the idea that our mind is very well traveled around this right path, around moving the sine wave directly in the right way. Like we all, that's like a lot of people are right-handed. Like our minds are pretty solid on that. But this backwards moving motion not so much. It's sort of haven't explored it as much. And then I was talking about how, like, if you had a birth imprint that was a sine wave going this way, then you would also have a sine wave going the other way at the moment of birth, right?
That's right.
And that hasn't been explored a lot in scholarship and astrology, but it's an interesting concept that theoretically makes sense, right?
Yes.
And I think we were also talking about just the idea of that the left moving is like the astral body, because it's the moon one with the tower, and the right moving is like the etheric body, the sun one, and that there's something to be said for getting those wheels moving at a phi ratio in the heart space. I think I think we talked about this at the party that one night.
Yep.
And I asked you guys, what do you think you do? I asked the group, and that people had great answers, and they said, I think it's spontaneous. Like, I don't think you have to, like, meticulously be like, I'm going to spend this one 30 and this one 20 or whatever. Like, I think you just come into the heart and it naturally happens.
Yes, that's right. So that's where you will find your power when you meditate and you go into stillness. You'll find this black light, you know. That's why you close your eyes, everything's black, and it's still, you know. Whereas white light, you want to see things. It's moving. It makes you want to see things. Dark light puts your eyes to rest. Therefore, you use your third eye. So, and that's the eye of the bull. The eye of the bull. The bull's eye. Yeah? And so when you go into the heart, the core, right here, then you can draw from this energy. This is the future. This is the past. And this is the now. So that's where the now is, along that plane. You won't find it in the brain. You won't find it in the generative system. You won't find it in the power center. You won't find it in the liver and kidneys doing all these vibrations. But you will find it right here, you know, on this plane. And heart, this is the plane of heart, earth, theatre. It is, that doesn't really work as nice. Anyway, you can see that that's
right.
TH, E, throw in another T, and heart becomes theatre. So it's here, along that plane. Once you understand that longitudinal plane and radiation is coming from your heart, then you can be centered. And you can draw from this energy, which is really the past. Because remember, this wave is going into the future. It has to be. Because it's making the future. It has to be redshift.
Okay.
Yeah. And past, and this is past because it's going back to cause. You know, and where it's timeless. Here is time. Hence, you see all the sand is pouring through the center of here, and then it's falling down to the bottom. Then you turn the hourglass around, etc. So there's your time-space continuum.
Right.
And this is the form that every atom, every sun, moon, every human, every animal, it's all this. They've all got an anatomy. There you go.
All right. I think that was a good recap of where we were at. Thank you. Thank you for recapping.
Thank you.
So we can finish. Yes.
Thanks, sister.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, for this part I'm going to decode the Walter Russells Optical Motor to show you how it works. Notice the second law of thermodynamics is invalid in a repetitive cyclic universe of equally interchanging effect. Also take note of the direction of flow and how this relates to Walter's motor. To explain this optical motor, take note of the A and B cores and poles. This is our equatorial line, and through this pipeline water is pumped into the reactor at the centre and back out the other side of the west pole, recycled around the design and back towards the centre. Now with this design the pipe narrows at key points going to and from the centre. This in effect creates a Higgs boson. This allows a pressure zone to be created at these points. Now if you remember Walter Russell's explanation of the parts of the colour spectrum colliding from the green, yellow and orange yellow parts of the colour spectrum, which collide with white, it is basically a short circuit. This creates the circumstances that are needed to cause chain reactions. The equatorial line is the compression poles and cycle. Notice in the north and south we have the electrical harness points at the desired distances at the boson locations where this energy pressure wave is created. These are our expansion zones which nature divides and multiplies the sex pairs. What this means is that when the electrical energy is created, there are two forces that are in opposition, going separate ways from one another. Positive electricity and magnetism, effectively. Thus, one side takes the positives and the other side takes the negatives. As this expands, of course, it multiplies, which is what you see with the numbers increasing to a maximum of 4. And that's it. This is all that you need to generate free electricity. This motor actually generated enough power to run a 52-room university. That's all the lighting, heating, and any electrical needs a university could need. This model occupied around 6 foot of floor space. The universal mathematics are there for you to understand how the ratios work. Okay, now let me show you what Santos was teaching and what Walter Russells motor just demonstrated in the APM model. Today you are going to learn how this realm really works. Now we will add in our trumpeters. Yes, I decoded what the trumpeters represent in scriptures. Let's add in our equatorial compression zones and our north and south expansion zones. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how our realm divides and multiplies the sex pairs. It is the exact same principle, although on a creator-sized scale. You will understand that hot flow across the equator now, hopefully. You can see now what is very special with the golden ratio. It is basically telling you that the Higgs boson zones are where the golden ratio lies. The golden parts of the colour spectrum where the short circuit will take place. They are all harnessing energy within their cubed spheres at the golden ratio. Pretty cool, isn't it? This image by Walter Russell contains some very interesting information. The gravity cycle is the motivative force of the universal heartbeat. Notice how Walter correctly uses the bar magnet as a pressure recorder, because this is what gravity truly is. A pressure system that is created by the halos we have been highlighting for some time now. We realized you do not need a container to create a pressure system. The projected halos create this system perfectly, and we have shown this in our End Times 2 video with the decodings of what Noah really is and how it works, and with references to the receding oceans events and how it was designed to contain water. Another thing that really surprised me when I overlaid this on our grid and decoded more parts of the realm, as this helped me to see how the flow was matching real world data. This is another layer of the APM model, and one conscience is going to explain how.
When I look at this, it's truly exciting to see everything I've been attempting to express for the last few years, shown in such vivid detail. So let's discuss it and relate it to our Earth energy flow, from the perspective of earthquakes and volcanoes. From our east and west gates, we have simultaneous energy coming in, running down the equator. As it hits each cross point of expansion areas, it will split and flow the grid up and down, releasing along the way, always in the same spots. This is repeatable data that can be easily tracked. From the east and west simultaneously, the energy will flow to the pre-designed path, moving towards the center of the grid. All of the crisscross points are volcanic fields as well. Some are dormant and some are active. Depending on the cycle of the micro scale of the world determines if these volcanic fields are active. The two large S's that we see are very special points. These areas are where the energy has multiplied and expanded out the most it can be in our realm, so the power generated back in to become compressed at the center is very great. We see the effects of these areas in the form of constant earthquake activity and major volcanic eruptions. These two major spots give the power it's push to continue the push that makes the journey. We see most of our major activity on the spots that are compressing inwards towards the center. All around, we do have activity, but it's the main compression areas that have the most powerful effects. As we hit the center of the grid, from both sides, the energy will make its way north, as we have shown in past presentations. We have referred to this as a reset spot. However, what occurs is the energy heads north up the meridian, and it spreads out at the northern point. It then wraps around and heads east and west to return again to the gates. Then the process begins again. This effect is what we call torus energy. This is the energy we have been following across the grid for over 2 years now. This is one more layer that allows us to show you the flow in more understandable terms. This is the cause of our Earth events that science says can't be predicted. However, with the blueprints like this, and the rest of the knowledge we alone have shared, we can know our Earth and the repeatable, predictable processes.
This design and layout perfectly explains the quake areas as One Conscience just demonstrated, which we have always stated this is technology switching on. And we can see from the design the anode and cathode array setup, the positive and negatives the energy paths and grid creates, the division and multiplication of the sex pairs. You can see how these energies are distributed around this grid easily. This layer appears to be on a different level to the previous layer One Conscience just talked about, another layer in the underworld. To decode the realm, we just need to decode the best minds in the world, as they all have to stay and operate within the laws of the construct. You can make your own minds up on how Walter decoded this knowledge, but as you can see here, this fits our grid perfectly and everything is exactly where it needs to be to work on a realm scale model. This of course adds another layer to the APM model, more parts of the construct decoded. The shapes of these two large areas also appear to have a 4-tier pyramidal design. Again, the Walter Russell explanation of gravity and pressure apply, which we know now relates to expansion and compression cycles that generate huge amounts of energy within the light spectrum. Also notice we now have an idea what would be at the east gate, another layer or area we can contemplate and work out its design. The design does appear to be recycling energy back into the grid. This is amazing information and certainly helps explain how this realm is working. The scriptural trumpets represent the torus field created by the tornado vortex the accelerators create. Two counter-rotating coils basically working together to create that environment. As we have mentioned previously, tornadoes and winds are created by the projected halos, of which we have been documenting and explaining now for years. The lunar waves I decoded in previous videos reveal the halos, as do many people's recordings, whom have been kind enough to share them. You can see various decodings of these videos here on my channel. We can now see a layer coming into view, which would represent a part of the east gates. Another addition to the APM model. Now we can see how the energy gets recycled back into the realm. Isn't that amazing, people? More blueprints that actually make sense when overlaid with the Nazca line overlays we call our grid. What are the chances of that? We can now duplicate that and demonstrate what it would look and behave like from all of the gates. And isn't that amazing? It makes perfect sense and completes the circuit. This is mind-blowing and very revealing information and helps explain a great many things. Okay, the next layer is our spiders, the tidal nodes as they are called. We call them power distribution centers. Their configurations is more in line with the transfer of energies to power other things. As they alternate, this is what creates our tides, the seawater of course being attracted to their activations and thus constantly on the move. Some are permanently on and others switch on and off. You can see by this animation the spiraling effect of this technology. We consider many character personifications such as Perseus to be one of these mechanisms. The cutting off of Medusa's head is really decoding into a rerouting of power. Now the red parts represent high tides and the blue parts represent low tides, and you can see how this technology is manipulating the water to create these tides. Just study it, people, and watch the flow. You'll see it circling round and round. Distribute water, some things will switch on and the water's then forced that direction and then it's rerouted another direction. The whole water table is being manipulated by this technology.
Let's take a moment and look at Perseus holding Medusa's head as seen in all the depictions. So, can we place this in our world? Yes, we absolutely can. When I outlined Perseus and placed him in the world, we come to the western United States, as seen here. He is on the west coast of North America holding Medusa's head, which is a giant in the topography of Western America, and going up into Canada. Also, if we pay close attention, we can see that Medusa is looking directly at Yellowstone. So this tells us that Perseus holding her head to look at Yellowstone is the way the power is turned off for that point, and he is directing it towards the northwestern direction instead. And to add to that, the direction that he is pointing, there are the islands coming off of Alaska where the volcanoes that erupt actually blow up the entire island and reform the topography all the time. So that tells us that there's great power being put into that area.
Now this image needs no introduction. This is Walter Russells Cosmic Pendulum. This is how Walter demonstrates how the spiraling pressure waves create harvestable energy. This fantastic animation with sounds demonstrating it perfectly. You can see where the centripetal and centrifugal forces play their parts in generating energy as they spiral outwards. The inside and outside of the torus field basically. The zero represents the equatorial line, and the left and right sides the division of the sex pairs. The division and multiplication of the harvested energies are perfectly demonstrated below. You can see now how the design of the spiral the ancients depicted everywhere is so very important and tells us they already knew this information. Notice how different parts of the colour spectrum give different amounts of energy. A big thanks go out here to P900 Coolpics for helping bring this image to life. What a fantastic, beautiful piece of work. Here is some more magnetic data from Ceres that perfectly matches what our research is showing. It reveals the spiraling flows of energy from the 3 key sites on our grid. You can see how the left-hand rule and right-hand rule spirals play their parts. The spiraling pressure waves are what create light. Remember, light does not move, it divides and multiplies, which gives the appearance of movement. Understand and follow these laws and you will create light. Compression, expansion, division and multiplication is the key. Okay, taking all the above into account, we can demonstrate now how the realm works in the APM model. We have our heat at the equator, which heats our reactor at the centre of the grid, the heart of the machine, Satan, Baphomet, or whichever name you wish to associate with this reactor. It then gives power to our first halo, which distributes the energy to start up various installations on the centre plate, the primary 8 for example. This then doubles in power as the second halo is now generating power and distributing it across the grid. Now she comes to life, and with all the larger halos operating within the golden ratio of their cube spheres, we are harvesting huge amounts of energy and transferring it around the grid. The spiders doing the same processes of distributing power where it is needed. The red and blue areas highlight the compression and expansion zones, and the Walter Russell overlay shows how the division and multiplication works on the realm scale model. We fade in and out our various overlays to see and connect these processes and introduce the gates in the north, south, east and west. Isn't that amazing, people? What a sight to behold. The overlays, the spiders, the power distribution, the reactor, the anodes and cathodes. Wow, this really is the power and the glory. Okay, now we come down to look north towards Polaris and the north gates, and we can see how the spiraling and illuminated light is what is creating our star trails. Stars are accelerated light from various parts of the visible spectrum, and their focus is Polaris, which is obviously feeding the energy back into the grid. We are basically in the eye of a storm, the inside of the spiraling vortexes that are compressing east to west and expanding north to south. This is how the APM model currently works from our understandings and decodings of everything that we have researched. This is a work in progress.
So let's talk about crystals and grasp an understanding of how much crystals play a part in our world and our luminary workings. A crystal or crystalline solid is a solid material whose atoms, molecules, or ions are arranged in a highly ordered microscopic structure, forming a lattice that extends in all directions. We can reference Enoch chapter 14, verses 10 through 16 for a fantastic description of this. They elevated me aloft to heaven. I proceeded until I arrived at a wall built with stones of crystal. A vibrating flame surrounded it, which began to strike me with terror. Into this vibrating flame I entered, and drew nigh to a spacious habitation built also with stones of crystal. Its walls too, as well as the pavement, were formed with stones of crystal, and crystal likewise was the ground. Its roof had the appearance of agitated stars and flashes of lightning, and among them were cherubim of fire in a stormy sky. A flame burned around its walls, and its portal blazed with fire. When I entered into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and cold as ice. No trace of delight or life was there. Terror overwhelmed me, and a fearful shaking seized me. Violently agitated and trembling, I fell upon my face. In the vision I looked, and behold, there was another habitation more spacious than the former, every entrance to which was open before me, erected in the midst of a vibrating flame. And so greatly did it excel in all points, in glory, in magnificence, and in magnitude, that it is impossible to describe to you either the splendor or the extent of it. Its floor was on fire, above were lightnings and agitated stars, while its roof exhibited a blazing fire. Macroscopic single crystals are usually identifiable by their geometric shape. Some examples of large crystals include snowflakes, diamonds, and table salt. A little fact is, if the world oceans were to evaporate, we would be left with 4.5 million cubic miles of salt. This would be a cube measuring 165 miles on each side. Salt in water carries an electrical charge. Also, water-based ice in the form of snow, sea ice, and glaciers is a very common form of crystals and polycrystals. Let's look at some verses that may relate to this. Revelations 22:1, and he shewed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. Revelations 4:6, and before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind. Most inorganic solids are not crystals, but they are polycrystals. Some examples of these metals are rocks, ceramics, and ice. By volume and weight, we find the largest concentration of crystals in the Earth's bedrock. Rock, such as granite, have cooled very slowly and under great pressures have completely crystallized, but with many kinds of lava were poured out onto our surface and cooled rapidly. And in this group we find amorphous crystals or glassy matter. In these, the atoms have no periodic structure whatsoever. Examples of amorphous solids include glass, wax, and many plastics. Other crystalline rocks, the metamorphic rocks such as marbles, mica, and quartzites, are recrystallized. This means that they were first at fragmental rock like limestone, shale, and sandstone, and have never been in a molten condition. Instead, high temps and pressure of metamorphism have acted on them by erasing them to their original structures and have induced recrystallization in the solid state. Now that we have an idea of what all is crystalline, let's shift to how crystals relate to electrical currents. This is due to the motion of ions and light particles. Ions move by hopping from site to site through the lattice. All solids can conduct electricity this way in crystals. The ion hops are induced by thermal fluctuations. As I said, they move within the lattice, vibrating around these points. Temperature is defined as the average energy of this vibrational motion. The more the ion move, the higher the temperature. Research shows that the higher the temperature, the more frequent are these thermal fluctuations. Ions therefore hop more often at higher temperatures. Ions are created in nature by sunlight. As the sun hits the compression point, it heats up greatly, so this switching and hopping occurs regularly during this time. As the sun hits the expansion point, the heat decreases and the ion's vibratory rate is decreasing. The light and heat begin to decrease for our sunsets. The same occurs at sunrise. Crystals such as quartz can be tapped for electricity using the piezoelectric method. By securing the crystal and subjecting it to a direct force with a permanent magnet, a detectable amount of electricity is released. We see this technology in cigarette lighters and gas grill ignition buttons. Continuously rapping on the crystal will produce usable electrical current. Although artificial, pyroelectric materials have been engineered. The effect was first discovered in minerals, such as tourmaline. The pyroelectric effect is also present in bone and tendon. Pyroelectricity is a property of certain crystals in which there is a natural polarization and as a result contain large electric fields. Pyroelectricity can be described as the ability of certain materials to generate a temporary voltage when they are heated or cooled. The change in temperature modifies the position of the atoms slightly within the crystal structure, such that the polarization of the material changes. This polarization change gives rise to a voltage across the crystal. A pyroelectric can be repeatedly heated and cooled to generate usable electrical power. This is the switching from positive to negative and expansion and compression points we see in our sun luminary. Now, if the temperature stays constant at its new value, the pyroelectric voltage gradually disappears due to the leakage current. The leakage can be due to the light particles moving through the crystal or ions moving through the air. Another example is gallium nitride, which is a semiconductor. The large electric fields in this material are detrimental in light-emitting diodes, but useful for the production of power transistors. Now let's look at crystals and light. So most people would say the fastest thing known is the speed of light, and it can't be stopped or trapped, right? Well, to stop or trap light is a technique called electromagnetically induced transparency. Researchers have done experiments. They start with a cryogenically cooled opaque crystal of yttrium silicate, which is an optical crystal material used as a host for various rare earth dopants. Doped with praseodymium, which is a soft silvery, malleable and ductile metal, valued for its magnetic, electrical, chemical, and optical properties. It is too reactive to be found in native form, and pure praseodymium metal slowly develops a green oxide coating when exposed to air. A control laser is fired at the crystal, triggering a complex quantum level reaction that turns it transparent. A second light source, the data image source, is then beamed into the now transparent crystal. The control laser is then turned off, turning the crystal opaque. Not only does this leave the light trapped inside, but the opacity means the light inside can no longer bounce around. With nowhere to go, the energy from the photon is picked up by atoms within the crystal, and the data carried by the photon is converted into an atomic spin. To get the light back out of the crystal, the control laser is turned back on and the spin excitations are emitted at photons. These atomic spins can maintain coherence for around a minute, after which the light pulse image fizzles. In essence, this entire setup allows for the storage and retrieval of data from light memory. It should be possible to store data for longer periods too, using other crystals, such as europium doped yttrium silicate, and by using specially tailored magnetic fields. Now we will look at one last bit and then explain why we are speaking about all this information. How can light be solid? Let's see how Ezekiel describes this. Ezekiel 1:6. The appearance of the wheels and their workmanship was like sparkling beryl, and all four of them had the same form, their appearance and workmanship being as if one wheel was within another wheel. Ezekiel 10:9. Then I looked, and behold, 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside each cherubim, and the appearance of the wheel was like the gleam of a tarnished stone. Locking individual photons together so they become like a solid object. Researchers constructed what they call an artificial atom, made of 100 billion atoms engineered to act like a single unit. They then brought this closer to the superconducting wire carrying photons. In one of the almost incomprehensible behaviors unique to the quantum world, the atom and photons became entangled so that their properties passed between the atom and the photons in the wire. The photons started to behave like atoms correlating with each other to produce one single oscillating system. Now, what I'm going to suggest that this is the process probably how the luminaries below occur. As it happens below, we see the lights above in our heavens, electricity being moved along our lattice grid and being stopped and trapped inside crystals to show us our luminaries. This is science reverse engineering to recreate our sun. This is what the ancients showed us, and this is what is in our faces with the royals and popes, etc., carrying their scepters with precious crystalline stones and gems. This is depicted all over for us in ancient glyphs and texts. Just take a moment with APM eyes and imagine what is in the layers below. Magnificent perfection of massive magnetic lines carrying electricity leading to crystals as described by Ezekiel in chapter 1, verse 22. And the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creatures was as the color of terrible crystal, stretched forth over their heads above. So let's define living creatures, full of vigor in active operation, or use in its natural state or place, having natural force and motion. It's easy to see how we are deceived about the living creatures and how the language has been messed with, and we believe the words to have meaning relating only to humans. However, if we know the language of the angels and understand it, we can see this is how our luminaries are working. What is that language? It's the language of frequency, magnetics, and light. To understand the original language, we need to look into etymology and understand what the words actually means. We covered a lot of this in our Sigil series on how to understand the language of the angels. So let's look at what Walter Russell has to say about crystals. The science of crystallography is today without the basic foundation of a fundamental law. It is today but an organized collation of known facts of unknown causes. It is today beyond the power of man to determine in advance the exact crystallization of any element, compound, mixture, or alloy. Nor can cleavage, twining, or other effects of crystallization be determined in advance of experiment or observation. The base principle, it will be no longer necessary for the chemist or metallurgist to waste precious effort in experimentation. The application of these simple laws, all effects can be worked out on paper, even to those amorphous effects which cannot be determined by experimentation. an application of his series of drawings to the following series, which ties crystallography to chemistry and electricity as a higher chemistry or electrochemistry, will be greatly simplified in the labors of the research chemists.
This is the current model I have been recreating of our Sun's halo system. Its technological configuration, which we have been privileged to see being revealed in the heavens. Remember, revelations simply means the construct reveals itself in the end times, the end of a cycle we have covered in our End Times Decoded videos. What we are seeing are various parts of the Sun's actual projector system being highlighted. Many parts of the solar boat's technological workings being projected, as well as the Sun's image. The Sun is attached to, or is a part of, the large horizontal halo. It is this that epicycles across our sky. Of course, its physical model is doing the same movements below. The scarab beetle represents this vehicle below, which is why the scarab beetle was considered sacred. It has very special meaning, and we can see why now. The scarab beetle decoded. It represents the solar boat, the Sun's vehicle that is projecting our Sun's halo system and image. Although I use the word projection, it is more than that. It can physically interact with the environment around it, converting elements to matter as it goes. They all operate on this same principle. The Moon also has this same halo configuration, but appears to be doing a reverse role. Watch them in the sky, people. You will see and capture these very special reveals sooner or later. This is what they are trying to hide, the true nature of our realm and how it really works. So we have a large horizontal halo which contains 8 nodal points, which we have previously referenced in many decodings, of which are doing different functions. We have a smaller horizontal halo at node 1, which is where the Sun's image seems to be originating from. At the front is a vertical halo, which is obviously involved in producing a vortex which is used to start the Sun generating its solar image. This one connects to the large horizontal halo at nodes 2 and 8. The two nodes we usually see either side of the Sun, and is working in conjunction with the larger vertical halo we see at nodes 3 and 7. This larger vertical halo is usually noticed by its show of colours produced in the visible spectrum, which reveals its electromagnetic nature. You can view various captures of the Sun's halos on our Sun Halo Focus videos here on my channel. A big thank you go out to all those people who have sent in their very special captures of this amazing revelation. There is much more to see yet. Eyes to the skies, people. Okay, now we are going to decode the sacred geometry of the Rome Colosseum. We are told it was filled with water so they could practice navy games. Oh, really? Do you want to see what I see? Of course you do. Buckle up, we're going in. I hope you all enjoyed that little tour of this 3D model of the Coliseum. Now let's take a look at this configuration. Let's remove the platform on the right so we can see and complete this circuit. Next we will add in our poles, the equatorial poles of course taking care of the compression cycle, and the north and south poles taking care of the expansion cycle, the division and multiplication of the sex pairs. All of which are operating well within the golden ratio of their cube spheres. Pretty cool, huh? Also take note of the pyramidal patterns of the cubes, or as Santos Bonnacci would call it, the pyramid, the fire in the centre. This is the heart of the machine. You can see now how the symmetry is important in the construction and what it truly means. So, the Rome Colosseum, ladies and gentlemen, is a very large power generation station. Consider Walter Russells' 6-foot in scale footprint model that could run a 52-room university to what something the scale of this Coliseum could run. This could run an entire city with ease. Simply add hot water. So, we can now consider the Rome Colosseum decoded. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and that you can see how easy this really is. So what you have seen is how we have decoded Santos Bonnacci's work into the APM model and how it explains the toroidal field and effects, which is what generates electricity. You have seen how we decode Walter Russells' work into the APM model and cross-reference it easily to the grid, worldly workings, the design and production of power generation, including a demonstration of how the realm is producing its own power and where these principles originate from. You have seen how the magnetic data provided by Ceres confirms the anode-cathode array setup either side of the reactor at the centre of the grid, how it distributes the energy, and how stars are created and are in a constant vortex spiralling north and south, the ones in the east and west being drawn in and made visible as they cross our skies. One Conscience has more than adequately given you the science hiding behind this technology and explained how it affects and interacts with our world around us. You have seen how the geometry of the Rome Colosseum was decoded easily using these principles. I have also decoded pyramids and ancient temples the same way. These will be out in our next video. From the macro to the micro, these laws apply. Power generation is simply compression and expansion, harnessing from the Higgs boson region of the equipment in use. The left and right hand rules being applied to water pressure and narrowings in the pipework to accelerate water and thus create the toroidal effect at the narrowings and widenings, as this would be the harnessing points. The toroidal pressure wave causing the circumstances needed to generate and harness electricity. The short circuit in the colour spectrum Walter Russell explained in his diagrams. All of mankind's works is designed and derived from and around this construct's workings. All the laws that Walter Russell states apply. There are a few things I disagree with from Walter Russells' work, and one is the fact that this is a technological construct which now reveals a very intelligent creator of unknown size, as the magnitude of this construct is vast, hence the ancients finding it hard to explain and express. Also take into account etymology. Much has changed in the way words are now perceived. There have been lots of language changes and the flipping of words to hide their true meanings. The constant changes in languages may also relate to the pole shift event that we have covered in the End Times Decoded videos. There is a chance this polarity flip may cause issues with memory. As I have mentioned previously, the data does state by 2050 68% of the world's population will have dementia. Why is no one even talking about this? This may of course be compounded by the chemtrails they use to try and hide the sun's halo system when it shows, which you can see in the sun halo focus videos. Again, a big thank you to those observant people sharing their very special captures. This is the true nature of our realm, a technological construct of unknown scale. We basically work with a strip of data we call a map, of which Ceres' magnetic data has shown is a much larger realm than mainstream's maps portray. But we can easily decode and explain the effects of the realm we have encountered for years now. This of course reveals and proves a creator. Their glory is a technological glory. They were teaching science and knowledge, not worship and religions. When you decode the realm with the understanding that the scriptural angels, the Anunnaki, cherubim, seraphim, etc. are just different names for the same technologies by different cultures, you realize they are all referencing the exact same thing. They're explanations for the technologies that create and move luminaries and are responsible for pretty much most of nature's processes. The seal of the 144,000 decodes easily as 144,000 sealed rooms below. Remember, Scripture tells us the underworld is their prison. These are the personified characters you have all seen in Geo-Petron hieroglyphs from every culture's history. This would be the reason that we can see that they would lie about the shape of the world, because when you arrive at flat Earth you are left with two very important questions. What is creating and moving the luminaries, and who created the mechanisms that are doing it? You are here. We are here, right now. Welcome to the angelic particle matrix. Let there be light. Solomon's Key Decoded. I made this to help you understand how this really works. So a big thank you go to the creator, Walter Russells and Santos Bonnacci. This decodes sacred geometry in all its forms and is the path to 0-point energy. It is based on the same principles as our realm uses. Oh, before we go, this should help you remember. The Ang, the crossplate, represents the east to west compression zones and the north and south the expansion zones, the loop at the top representing the torus field. The Celtic cross, east to west compression zones and north to south expansion zones, the circle representing the cubing of the sphere around the reactor. A beautiful Native American one, the eagle's wings represent the east to west compression zones. Note the lovely use of red and blue shift colours. Right hand rule in, left hand rule out. The north and south representing the expansion zones. The halo is the cube sphere. A lovely Japanese example, east to west compression, north to south expansion. Note the use of a deity representing the reactor, and the halo with directional flow arrows. Another fine example, east to west compression, north to south expansion. Excellent use of the red and blue parts of the spectrum and a very ornate piece. A lovely gold example, notice the spirals indicating the flow, east to west compression, north to south expansion. The reactor represented by the dot in the centre. A Maltese cross type example, east to west compression, north to south expansion. Lovely use of a ruby for the reactor at the centre, and the gates in the north, south, east and west represented by the circles. The common theme here is that everyone knew what it all represented, and now so do you. We knew this, you will remember.